Starting. Hangouts on Air is live. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
It's a new year. And I think we capped off last month saying we've been doing this for like 8 years now or something, right? So This is the 8th new year for us. And I did have a topic this month. I don't think I mentioned it to you guys. The topic I wanted to talk about this month was your philosophy. What's your philosophy, if you have one, when you're managing and deploying machines to end users? Do you have a philosophy? And I'll leave you guys think about that. Someone that I wanted to introduce was Mike Toole from Duo, one of my coworkers, and he's IT lead at Duo. And maybe you can introduce yourself, Mike.
Yeah, hey everybody. Mike Toole, senior systems engineer over on the endpoint side here. Well, endpoint plus a bunch of other stuff, but do a lot of endpoint stuff at Duo. So,
bunch of other stuff. That's what happens at smaller companies. Many hats.
I think they just call it DevOps now.
Yeah, DevOps is such an overloaded term. I don't know. Do you guys call yourself DevOps?
Yeah, I always say that. Sounds cool. Everyone's like, DevOps, that's great. I heard that's a new thing.
It gets you looked up on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, speaking about that, Mike, I'd love to hear if you have a philosophy when you are deploying machines to end users.
Yeah, so I guess ours has effectively been a journey, just being like several different companies, from tiny startup to fast-growing startup to now acquired by Cisco. Effectively, we've always had a core philosophy of just enabling users, and then also basically like working with them for best security practices. So it's a lot of managing machines for security professionals is an interesting thing to do. So and with that, it's a lot of like getting super in the weeds with end users sometimes, or before it hits end users sometimes. So we're very rapid patchers. So like beta testing everything, being in the Apple program, just like terrible APFS nightmares. So yeah, so it's a lot of just like trying to get in front of seeing things before users. And then as far as like in the management system side, a lot of it's all cloud based. We try to live the Beyond Corp life. So we're not asserting VPN privileges or anything like that. So yeah, a lot of remote management.
Yeah, I think one of the things that made me think about this was that Apple has sort of like a very definite philosophy that they're pushing people towards, and that philosophy is enroll in DEP, get it enrolled in an MDM, send your end users a box that they can take the Mac out of the box and feel like all special, like they went to the Apple store and bought this themselves. And it's like it's an out of the box experience, like quite literal out of the box unboxing experience for an Apple user. But a lot of Mac admins and companies either don't do that or can't do that for some reason. They send it to an inventory tech and it gets an asset tag and the serial number recorded and put it in an inventory system. Like there's this whole mechanism ahead of a machine getting to an end user. I'm not sure how many people are living that pure vision that Apple has for their philosophy of just like, hey, drop ship this machine to an end user, let them open it up, done. So how and again, this is sort of a Mac focused group here. Duo's pretty heavy on the Macs. Do you have a ratio of machines at Duo that you can talk about?
Yeah, we're pretty heavy Mac shop. I want to say it hovers around 80% Mac and 20% Chrome, and then like a few Windows engineers. that are poor souls. But yeah, mostly back fleets.
Yeah, yeah. I think we find that as we talk to people, even who don't show up at these types of events, that many companies are very Mac heavy nowadays. Have you looked at that Apple philosophy of just pure DEP MDM, send it to an end user?
Yeah, so I think they even pitch it as like zero touch provisioning is like the buzzword, which like honestly, I've done full like end to end like mock-ups of that and tried to do it in like a sane way, and it just always comes back to there's always weird edge cases where like they don't do a great job of catching things up front. So we're like it's like we're like maybe one touch or like less touching, so as least amount of touching as we could do. Yeah, so a lot of that is we're like just constantly working towards systems making better choices for that stuff. So we're a heavy chef shop right now, and just basically we're doing some crazy stuff with provisioning on that side. I'm actually working on a conference talk for ChefCon on that, but
that's great.
Yeah, so maybe more to come.
That's great. I think you should look at some Mac focused conferences as well, because I think a lot of people certainly get around to different conferences. People have heard of Duo and they know it from the security side, and like, oh, like it's the first time I've ever had people like come up to me just arbitrarily like, oh, you're from Duo. We use Duo products. We love it. Great. So everyone knows the security side of Duo, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on the DevOps side of things that probably more people should hear about. Just a quick reminder, bunch of people on the Hangout. I know you all have experience with this stuff. Feel free to jump in. I see some people on the stream only. Feel free to ask questions in the Slack channel, and we'll relay them to everyone here. But while I have some people from Google here, do you have a philosophy on rolling out machines? Is there some overriding vision that you have that you try not to break when you're rolling out?
I would like to get on Apple's philosophy of direct-to-desk. For me, and probably a lot of other security-minded folks out there, the lack of, on these new T2 machines, you have secure boot, which is awesome, but it's not remotely tested secure boot. So how do you trust what Apple is shipping you? Sounds kind of paranoid, but like, what if the FedEx guy was paid off, or the guys higher up the chain were paid off?
It's not paranoia if they're really out to get you.
Sure. So those types of problems.
But at least right now, with the T2 and the OS running on the T2, like you might re-image a machine, but that's not necessarily plowing over all the firmware and updating all of that. So that's kind of a tough one.
Yeah. Well, it's a big area of work for us right now, is figuring out how to take a new machine and sticking with Apple's guidelines for how you should install the OS, getting it to a state where we can hand it to a user and be confident that the bits on the disk are the bits that Apple intended those bits to be.
Right.
And then from there, working towards a zero-touch distribution policy.
Speaking of the deployment side of this, I haven't looked at it, but I know I saw Tim Perfett on Twitter talking about he made this Arduino-based Mac deployment stick. Has anyone seen this? Have you looked at what it is?
I work in the same project basically, and I think I've got a better to do the same thing. Sure.
Okay.
I'm not ready to show it yet. It's pretty cool, but it's also Arduino.
Oh, really?
It's based on the same board, the Teensy board.
So, is this just sending key presses to automate the?
That, I mean, ultimately, but I'm working on a system where you're sending key presses, but you're triggering those key presses from another device.
Oh.
So you can have a dynamic interaction between the machine you're setting up and some set of scripts that you have existing somewhere else.
Interesting. So I guess my point in bringing that up though was when I saw Tim working on this, and Tim's brilliant. So I trust him. He's done some good work, and this was interesting to me in that it's sort of like goes back to old school imaging. So after everyone's been beating the drum of imaging is dead, this is kind of like imaging again, right?
There's ways to not do it. Imaging block by block.
Yeah. But you're
from a functional point of view, we're much closer to where we were in 1995.
Yes, exactly.
Than we are to where we were in 2016.
What you need to be able to do is have this imaging stick. You need, like 100 of them, and you plug them into 100 machines, and whatever you type on the one master console goes to all of them.
Like old school Unicast.
Like,
that's exactly. That's
really. All right.
And then you can also put local storage on it. So if you want to install stuff.
That's it's interesting and terrifying.
What if you threw some machine learning at it, and it could look at the screens of the computers we were setting up?
That would be pretty wild.
That would be pretty wild. I don't know how to do that.
I was going to say.
I have no idea how to do that part, but
I think we do. We got some good data science people who do. They're really clever.
I'm happy to.
There would probably be someone who would want to collaborate on that.
I'll let you know when I'm ready.
All right. So yeah, getting to Apple's philosophy, I think, is still, I don't know if it's a long way off, and maybe it works for much smaller shops, but it seems like where it falls down is the use case that it's intended for, which would be larger shops, right? Like I think you can't enroll in DEP if you're under a certain size, correct?
Right.
Is that right? So, like, that means DEP is targeted at larger organizations for some value of large, and those are the ones not using it.
We enrolled in DEP when we were like 7 employees.
7. All right. Okay. Maybe that restriction was lifted.
Yeah.
Was that a restriction at one point where you had to be a certain size or something?
You just have to have a depth.
No, I just enrolled with 1 device and with 2 people.
A DUNS number.
I was going to say, we were also pretty small when we enrolled.
Okay.
The DUNS number is the key factor as far as I know.
Okay. Well, between Henry and Victor, I trust that that's authoritative information. But yeah, I could be wrong, but I kind of remember, like, maybe it was in the beta days of DEP or something. Like, you had to be a certain. There was one point in the life cycle of DEP where you had to be a certain size. But it's good if they've lifted that, because it sounds like if you are smaller, DEP probably works pretty well, although I'm not entirely sure how much of a benefit you get out of it. Like, Henry, I presume you're enrolling 1 device is mostly for testing and not.
Yeah, it's just we start a new division, and it's just like a total separate entity, and so we had to start with just 1 machine as you count from one company account to the other. So we just purchased the first machine, and now it's counting up. But we could start.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense.
It's very convenient as a remote company to have it, although it's definitely not perfect. And I've seen cases where, like, people don't have good internet at home, and the firewall will block, and then one day it'll like, oh, it magically like enrolled, and it's like, where have you been? I've been chatting with you on Slack forever. Yeah.
Well, when you say it's good for remote, like, it definitely is, but it also depends how far remote, because DEP is not available in every country quite yet.
Or heaven forbid, the nodes are all down, which happens quite frequently.
And there's no published
right
uptime for it. But also that's a problem we face. Like, a certain percentage of our fleet is going to always be in these geographies that probably will never have DEP.
Yeah.
Apple likes to say that they will someday, but knowing political alignment, I don't believe it.
I mean, Apple's made really good strides. Like, the number of countries has grown and grown, which is great. But yeah, there will always be these these edge cases where it's difficult. And I think, the people in this room certainly recognize that, like working across different countries' laws and things like Project Fi. Like, why is that not in every country? Well, telephony laws across different countries are difficult, right? Like those can definitely be some large challenges. But regardless of the challenge for Apple in getting this into every country, like that can be the deal breaker for, I think, a lot of people, particularly like a global company like Google, where you're going to have offices in countries that aren't supported. And then what do you do besides make an Arduino stick of power? But yeah, Victor, I'd like to hear your thoughts a little bit on the DEP MDM enrollment, since you're pretty deep in that world. Have you seen any improvements in MDMs communicating with endpoints?
Not really. Unfortunately, the one thing is, like, at least from my perspective, Apple is way too slow in adding features that we need and responding to them. So when I started playing with MDM, over 3 years ago, it virtually unchanged. They added like a few keys and like a plist here and there. They tried to add file vault support, but it's largely been unchanged. And unfortunately, the requirements around bootstrapping are just, the Chromebooks are much better equipped for that kind of deployment. And we're even seeing Windows now very quickly start to adopt ways in which administrators would be able to take advantage of an environment like this much better than Mac administrators would be. And it's a shame because Apple kind of got this started, and then, like, I don't know what we're waiting for. Maybe we're just waiting for a new version of hardware devices to like kind of proliferate everywhere. But yeah, it's virtually unchanged. That's what it comes down to. I haven't seen any development that I'm excited about.
I mean, I guess the flip side of this is that when Apple started DEP and MDM, it was really a solution for iOS devices. And again, they sort of led the way there. And I think we've seen Android take up that torch as well. There's zero-touch deployment for Android. But I think, I'm speaking not from experience here, but more from anecdotes. And again, someone should feel free to jump in and correct me. But I think from the people that I've heard that manage iOS deployments, they're relatively happy with DEP and MDM versus the Mac side of things. Like, I think there are Mac administrators that avoid DEP and MDM for a whole bunch of good reasons. But on the iOS side, that's pretty much the way you're doing things. If anyone's managing iOS devices, please jump in and let me know if that's accurate or not.
Well, part of this, there aren't a lot of choices.
Well, there aren't a lot of choices. I mean, there are choices of MDMs, but yeah, there aren't a lot of choices, but I don't think I've heard quite as much griping about it on the iOS side, where it seems that people genuinely are drop shipping iOS devices to end users. They take it out of the box, turn it on, it enrolls, they got to do something, authenticate or whatever, and all their stuff magically shows up.
I think if the Mac was an environment where people would accept a very specific workflow, taking a company like Fleetsmith and the offering that they provide, like if the things that they provide in terms of options would fit most organizations for Macs, like their implementation of what Apple allows seems pretty good, at least like from me playing around with it and watching other people. And it's just clearly not enough. Otherwise, more people would adopt it. But I think it's more on Apple to make that available rather than people implementing it. But
yeah, I guess there are two ways to go with that, and you're right. Either Apple needs to do the job 100% of the way, or they need to get the foundation set in a way that third parties can successfully build on top of what they provide. So back to philosophy. Any other things that people want to share in terms of, like, you know, you always are careful and cautious to do or not do a certain thing because you know it's the right thing to do for your end users, or you know they'll revolt or something like that.
Well, I seem to always be at odds with the various AV vendors out there and how much performance they take up on the machine.
Yeah,
And trying to limit anything besides user workload to as be efficient as possible, which is a hard fight.
yeah. I guess that's sort of interesting. Like when you're stuck in the middle of deploying a product, and it having a negative impact on end users. Yeah, I mean, I think we all want to empower our end users to get things done. I know ages ago when I was speaking with Clay about, you know, deployment of Macs, you know, one of our main philosophies was always like, you know, Windows machines were always known for, like, you get the Dell installation and it has all this kind of crapware installed along with the base install and all this stuff in the taskbar. And it's like, yeah, that's exactly what we don't want to be. Like, we want to deliver as close to the out-of-box experience as possible, not load up with a bunch of stuff, and let end users choose what they want on their machine rather than push a bunch of stuff down to them in advance or you know, whatever. I think that turns out to be a good decision, especially, again, if you are going with, you know, installing a bunch of stuff at first boot up. It's like, if you're installing all this stuff that they don't need or want, you're taking up a bunch of valuable extra time and possibly bandwidth if that's something you're concerned with, and installing things on their machine just for the heck of it. That will also probably then need to continue to be over the life cycle of that machine. Like, you wouldn't want to roll out Xcode if the end user is not going to use it. So then there are all these Xcode updates and there are gigabytes worth of data. So yeah, that's one thing that's always kind of stuck with me in terms of philosophy of, you know, end user vision and helping our end users. It's like, let's just give them a nice clean experience. But, you know, obviously we need our management agents and some things for security, etc. All right, cool. Anyone have any other points on philosophy? We usually wrap up with a review of upcoming events. I know there are a number that I always miss, and someone's going to remind me of them. But Victor, is there going to be a QueryCon this year? Is there going to be a QueryCon version 2?
Nice. Yeah. We're just, there's definitely going to be. I actually have a meeting on Thursday to discuss what that's going to look like.
Excellent.
And yeah, I think we're looking to have a bigger, better QueryCon. We got a lot of good positive feedback, and yeah, we're going to try to make it happen probably around the same time as last year. And now it's a call for proposals sometimes in early February. So
very cool, very cool. Yeah, I only heard good things about it, so congrats, and I think everyone's looking forward to the next iteration of that. I don't know the dates, but I know we got Mac DevOps coming up. MacAduck, that's right. That's actually first. One. That's actually the next one, March. They moved it to March this year.
I'm actually doing it.
You are? Nice. Attending?
Attending.
It's good. I should try to make it over there for that, because
you should.
My complaint with the last two was I had a conflict each time, and this time I don't think I have a conflict, so maybe I can swing that.
Let's do it.
There you go. I might actually take you up on that. MacDuck, Mac DevOps, Penn State, MacAdmins.
WPC.
WPC. Kind of. I don't really count that one anymore. It's not so much for Mac admins anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's for Mac people anymore. It's like real heavy iOS. That's good. Yeah, I don't know. There's some good stuff. You got to pay attention to it. I don't know if you have to be there for it, but that's another
Like
event.
Greg Parker left. Like good talk stuff.
That's true. True. I know Mac Tech and JNUC. That's one I always forget because I'm not deep in the
MacSysAdmin, of course.
MacSysAdmin, of course. That's one. That's MacSysAdmin would be the one. Like I would swim across the Atlantic if I had to. Like that's the conference I will get to every single year.
Objective C by the Sea.
Yeah, Objective by the Sea. He had a first run at that, and I guess he announced he had
the
the
Europe edition.
Yes.
He wants to do a Europe edition, and I have no idea where it will happen, but it will happen, of course, on the seaside. So probably Portugal.
Yes, I think he's floating. Yes, Portugal or Spain, I think he's mentioned. And I think it was going to be like alternating every 6 months, if I heard him correctly. So there'll be the one in Hawaii, there'll be the one in Europe. So Hawaii every year, staggered with Europe. But it's cool, good for him. Like it's a good name. That's security-focused conference, but obviously very Mac heavy. I'm really glad to see Patrick Wardle doing well because he sort of showed up on the scene out of nowhere, and it was just, to me, it was really odd to have this ex-NSA guy offering all these free security tools. I remember sitting down, reversing a bunch of them, kind of looking through them, going, "Oh, all right, they don't seem to be doing anything oddball." So it's a great service to the community. I really like a lot of the tools he offers. And I think that rounds out the year, and I think that rounds out today, unless anyone has any questions for the group.
No questions, but I had a few comments. One was the NSA angle. The RFA conference is happening soon, and one of their things is there's somebody from NSA coming speaking about them releasing previously internal tool reverse engineering, supposed to be competitive with IDA Pro in some ways. Been hearing a lot of buzz about it. That's various slacks.
Yeah, that's another one that's just like free tool, NSA. That's, I don't know. I don't know. Like I've seen some people say like that's such a good thing, but at the same time, I don't feel any real shortage of reversing tools in the Mac community. There's IDA Pro, which on the Mac isn't as good as the Windows counterpart necessarily, but you know we have Hopper and we have LLDB and we have Radar, and like there are a bunch of good tools out there. So maybe I'm not deep enough into it to feel the pinch, but like I mean it's always good to have more tools. But free tool from the NSA, I don't know. Yeah,
and then the other thing is in New York City there's the Empire Hacking Meetup, and it's monthly, although they missed some. But the next one is in February 12th, and
I could swear that was specifically every other month.
Okay, it might be.
Yeah, I think that's what he does. Yeah, it's Dan Guido from Trail of Bits. It's a good meetup. I've only made one last year, but it's a good meetup. And at the end of the year, he does the sort of like most day. It's not a full day, but it's most of the day sort of conference. This year, the conference mostly talked about Bitcoin and blockchain, so I kept those hours for myself.
Here, I was like, I don't know if I need to attend that, but yeah, usually it's a really great talks about reverse engineering and security topics. And
yeah, there's actually another one, and I'm blanking on it, but it's a week from today. Again, New York based. Not Empire Hacking. I'll have to drop in the channel after this. I don't recall the name, but there's another one that's a monthly sort of like, hey, let's get together and talk about security type events. So, and there's actually a B-Sides in New York in 2020, but there's a B-Sides on Long Island sometime this month. So for anyone in the security community, you know, these B-Sides events, there's actually one close by. So
And in Europe, there's in March, I think, the Troopers Conference, which is also security focused. And I've never been there, so probably I attend this year. And then there's the Amsterdam edition of Hack in the Box, which I don't know, happens in June. I don't know the exact dates, but they are. So last year at Hack in the Box, Jonathan Levin was speaking. So those people come over to that conf as well. So for the European folks, it would be interesting to look into that as well.
Yeah, I've never been to Hack in the Box, but I've definitely heard a lot of good things about Troopers. So that's good. I'm actually, I need to carve out some time and watch all the videos from CCC. So
yeah, it was great this year. It was really great. Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, first on my list is Trammell Hudson's talk, where he tried to prove if the Supermicro attack was realistic, which I think was really cool. And apparently he got some like logic on like a resistor size thing and put it in between a chip, and he's bonkers. Yeah, he's really good. So all right, with that, thanks everybody, and we will see you next month.